equals good. The white knight is the good guy. Trying to think of other examples, but of course now I'm
literal,
blanking.
like, light and darkness is, like, considered goodness and badness. Like, they're, like, when
And
we talk
badness.
about, like, good and bad, we always talk about, like, the light at the end of the tunnel. Like, especially right now with COVID-19, everyone keeps talking about the light at the end of this dark tunnel.
Right.
And so it's definitely, like, ingrained in our language. I have a project that I work on from time to time, and it's another podcast, but it's called The Novel Savage, where I read romance novels that are specifically about Native Americans or include Native American characters in them. And there was definitely, like, the same pattern in these books, which tend to, I mean, we all know that literature and art and television and movies all tend to reflect, like, the societal worldview of the time.
Right.
And this has been, whether it's a book from the 1960s, 1980s, now it's been a trend, like, in these books where we have the beautiful, often, like, white woman. Usually it's, like, a white woman who meets, like, this Native American man, and they're, like,
Right.
you know, scary and different, and she's, like, pure and beautiful, often virginal, actually. Like,
Yeah, that's definitely a thing.
one thing is clear in all of these books that I have read and in real life, that the dominant group seems to subordinate and disenfranchise the otherized group, and even commit, like, horrific acts of violence against them without feelings of remorse or moral doubt. And so, like, to see this in the books, but then to know, like, how very, very real, like, this is and has been historically.
Yeah, like how much on purpose it was at one point, you know? And I think, like, that's the thing. Like, so many of these ideas that, like, lighter skin, blonde hair, blue eyes, you know, like the basically European ideal for feminine beauty, we still tend to think of that as the right way to be, and we don't necessarily think of it as racist because we don't think it's intentional. Like, we don't think that we're taught that intentionally. And most of the time at this point, I don't think that we are, but a long time ago, people definitely held that up as a beauty ideal on purpose so that they could do terrible things to other people. And then later on, as far as it applies to, like, modern beauty standards, like, the beauty industry decided to uphold those ideals. And a big part of the reason why they decided to uphold those ideals is because they are so unattainable for so many people that the beauty industry can keep selling you shit your entire life. Because if you are not a person who was born with the genes to make you look like that, you are more likely to keep buying their products your entire life trying to reach that ideal. And like you said before, Lenny, like, beauty standards are always changing. Like, I'm getting close to 40, and I can look back over the course of my life and see the ways in which even our American, like, Eurocentric beauty ideals have changed. And, you know, that changes, like, every decade. Probably less than that now that we're in the internet age where, like, everything changes very quickly. Not only is the blonde, blue-eyed, you know, big boobs, tiny waist, relatively large butt, but not too big butt, you know, pure pink lips, maybe a few freckles, but not too many freckles.
Pink, but not too pink.
Not like harlot pink, obviously. And full lips, but not too full, because then you start to look a little less white. These are all constantly moving targets. So even if you are trying to aspire to, you know, the blonde and blue-eyed ideal, if you get there, probably the standards will have changed a little bit. So then you have to, like, switch. And I feel like that's particularly easy to see in the fashion industry, where, like, literally every season, all of the designer clothes change so that you can almost never actually be up to date fashion-wise. It's the same when it comes to beauty standards. Like, so when I was a kid in the 80s, the way that you were supposed to look as a woman was to have big hair, not particularly full lips, definitely very white, and you had like no butt. Butts were bad and scary in the 80s.
But blue eyelids were
very
not
important. Yeah. Yes, and giant earrings, very important also.
Okay, don't knock the giant earrings. Okay, like
there's nothing wrong with giant earrings, but they were very important.
Obviously, this is a podcast about sexuality, and so like sex drives power, which drives money, which drives sex, which drives power. I mean, we have this triangle. And one of the things that you're kind of touching on here is that this like beauty superiority also falls into a classist system where one's class can be guessed, like based on the looks. Like, if you are able to like check off all of these different beauty standards, then obviously you're a person of a certain like class.
Right.
And that's changed throughout history, where in some places women in history, but also in different places in the world, a woman who is heavier might be considered more beautiful because like clearly they're getting more food, or you know, they can afford more food. Or like in different places, paleness is a standard of beauty because you're not out working in the sun. So there's definitely like class standards of beauty, where at the same exact like things today can mean the exact opposite. Like somebody who has who is like heavier may be considered like less beautiful because they're not able to afford like clean food,
or go to the gym all the time,
right?
Yeah.
Or have the time to like put in like an hour worth of makeup to like look nice.
Or to be able to afford that makeup.
Yeah, that makeup.
Right.
Which is really messed up because when you think about it, a lot of jobs hire based on beauty. There's been studies done where like people who meet the beauty standards of the time are more likely to get hired than people who aren't. So if you can't afford the makeup, if you can't afford the clothes to wear to the job interview, then you're less likely going to get hired for the job, which is really messed up. And then when you do get hired for the job, especially people who have like natural hair, you know, you have to meet the standards that are on the beauty standards that are in these employment handbooks.
Right.
Or even at school, like we're looking at like people enforcing like girls who wear spaghetti straps to school while at the same time saying, oh, we can't make students wear masks, you know,
right.
in the time of COVID.
Exactly. Yeah, and like a lot of schools, like there's been a lot of uproar in recent years about like schools not allowing people to wear dreadlocks, you know, or people not even like schools not even allowing like African American students to just wear their hair natural. Like it has to be like braided or, you know, kept under control, quote unquote.
Even in the last couple of years, like Native American students have had their hair cut in schools.
That's right. Oh my God, I forgot about that.
Or have been kicked out of schools for having like long hair without people realizing that like Native Americans have had long hair and were like stripped of their identity with the Catholic Church shaving our heads in order to force us into assimilation.
Yeah. Yeah. And like all of this is, again, like I feel like so much of it is done in the name of like normalcy. You know, like we don't want disruptions in our classroom. So we're going to, you know, send this girl home if she's wearing spaghetti straps because boys can't control themselves if they see her shoulders. Like, or, you know, we don't want this kid's dreadlocks to somehow disrupt the learning environment. I don't understand how that works. Like, but you know, like it's all very often done in like this, like, oh, we're doing what's best for you kind of thing. And there is like a reality to that. Like being considered conventionally attractive, like you said, it gives you more opportunities employment-wise, education-wise. It just opens up more doors to you. Like being considered beautiful is power unto itself. Sexual power that leads to money power, that leads to power.
Right.
It fits right into that triangle. But we have to acknowledge that the beauty standards are by and large, they're arbitrary. Like, some old white dude at some point, whether it was, the Pope or somebody who got off of a boat, like on the shores of, the Americas, like, decided the way to be. And we are all still, in a lot of ways, like, living that out.
Absolutely. They're arbitrary, but not meeting these standards, especially for, like, BIPOC and non-cis normative people, still has real world
absolutely
consequences for us that don't meet those standards.
Right.
Say I dress like the normal, like, comic guy that goes on stage, where I'm wearing a t-shirt, I'm wearing cargo shorts, and I have my hair pulled back in a ponytail, and I'm not wearing any makeup. Like, I'm going to get, as a woman who's on stage, I'm going to get less laughs. I know that because I tried it.
Yeah,
I wanted to see what would happen if I went on stage without makeup, if I went on stage with lots of makeup, if I went on stage in a dress, if I went on stage in a t-shirt. And there are definite noticeable differences when I went on stage with, like, a pair of Spanx on and a dress and full makeup and my hair fixed and high heels. And I'm comfortable, like, I'm uncomfortable for the entire night, but I got more laughs that night,
Right.
And, well, at the same time, I made a joke on stage once about cargo shorts, and a white straight male comic got pissed off and told me to check my privilege.
Oh my God, what?
While I stood there in Spanx and the most uncomfortable tight dress and my boobs pushed up to my chin and my high heels,
oh my God,
told me to check my privilege.
I totally have some guesses about who that might have been. But we are not shit-talking people in this show.
No.
But, I mean, that's something that, like, I think needs to be brought into the conversation, right? Like, the lengths that especially female-identified individuals will go to try to measure up to beauty standards are extremely, I don't know what the right word is, long? We go to long lengths? High lengths? We go to great lengths. They're big.
The biggest of lengths.
Because, like, along with the idea that that white beauty ideals are the right ones, we've also been taught that women, because we have fewer, even in today's world, like, fewer high-paying job possibilities. We are supposed to be making babies and not focusing on our careers. Like, our best chance of a good life is to get a good husband. And in order to get a good husband, you have to meet these beauty standards because that's what men want. So whether that is true or not in today's world is kind of beside the point right now. Like, the point is that we have been taught as female people that maintaining our appearance and presenting the best possible version of our appearance at every possible moment is, like, it's our greatest ideal. We are supposed to be pretty. When we do not present ourselves as pretty, we get worse outcomes. We get fewer laughs on stage. We get fewer job interviews and job, placements. We don't make as much money. Like, this is very real world ramifications of beauty standards. And so
if you present yourself as too pretty and something happens to you, then that is also our fault.
Also your fault.
Yes.
Yeah, because if you're too pretty, then you make people uncomfortable because they can't focus on their work because your shoulders are showing. Like, there's no way to do it right. Like,
well, I mean, people get blamed for their own rapes because of how they were dressed. Because were they wearing lipstick that night? Were they wearing a low-cut shirt?
Was it red lipstick? I mean, that's the worst kind of lipstick.
Well,
we all know.
There's a classy red and there is a trashy red. But
right.